This is Plant-Based Briefing. Farmed bluefin tuna brands claim to be sustainable. Here's what really happens. Part 1 by Rachel Adams at sentientmedia.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the Plant-Based Podcast where I curate, get permission, and narrate a variety of articles on healthy, compassionate, and sustainable living in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And today's article is longer than that, so I'm splitting it into 2 parts. I'll read part 1 today and tune in tomorrow for the second half. It's written by Rachel Adams, who is a marine biologist, writer, and photographer specializing in marine conservation and aquaculture. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. Farmed bluefin tuna brands claim to be sustainable. Here's what really happens. Part 1 by Rachel Adams at sentientmedia.org. I hopped aboard a tuna tour to investigate what it takes to confine these majestic apex predators. It's 10 a.m. at the sunny Spanish Marina in Ametia del Mar, Tarragona. A banner that reads, "Tuna Tour, possibly one of the best adventures of your life," stands square on the jetty in front of a slick white catamaran, ready to take tourists to scuba dive with, quote, wild Atlantic bluefin in their own habitat, unquote, as the tour site explains. I'm asked to grin for a photo as I climb aboard to the party song, "That's the Way I Like It." We're about to head 3 miles offshore, just enough time to watch the tour company's promotional video, linked here. The Balfego Tuna Company farms wild-caught Atlantic bluefin tuna in cages off the east coast of Spain. Unlike tinned tuna, which are made of smaller species, Atlantic bluefin tuna are massive creatures, fattened up by Balfego on mackerel and sardines, to be harvested on demand whenever an order comes through. Most of the fish is exported to Japan, where sushi and sashimi, expensive treats before the 1960s, are now part of the daily diet. Since Japanese wild tuna stocks have been exhausted for several decades, chefs rely on farmed tuna, largely imported from Europe. Nearly all of the Mediterranean-caught bluefin tuna now go to fattening farms, located mostly in Italy, Malta, Croatia, Spain, and Turkey. In 2023, these countries collectively caged 22,754 tons of tuna. 4 farms in Malta alone account for a third of the tuna caught in Europe. Since consumer demand for tuna continues to rise amid diminished wild stocks, Atlantic bluefin tuna are an extremely valuable product. In 2019, sushi chef Kiyoshi Kimura famously paid a record $3.1 million for one in Tokyo's fish market. In other words, tuna farming is a very lucrative enterprise. Balfego, which won a prize from the Catalonian government for sustainable tourism, also offers diving tours on their farms, which they portray as sustainable, traceable, and transparent. Here, visitors feed the tuna and dive with them, getting a rare glimpse of how these fish live in captivity, a far cry from, quote-unquote, their own habitat, despite the company's marketing claims. Fish farms catch Atlantic bluefin tuna in the wild. As we head out and the short film plays, an announcer explains how fishing boats catch wild tuna off the southwest of Ibiza in the western Mediterranean Sea. In 2022, their fleet of 30 boats caught 2,458 tons of tuna, which made up over a quarter of the quota for all the countries in the Mediterranean basin. The fish migrate to the Mediterranean from the eastern Atlantic Ocean to breed. During the 5-week fishing expedition, fishers use large nets to encircle the young tuna shoals, sort them into different nets for transport, and very slowly tow them back to the farm for fattening in Tarragona. The process takes weeks, during which time some fish will likely die en route to the farms and be discarded before fisheries observers can count them. For those fish who do make it, the narrator says they'll live a natural life. The company says it only captures fish that are at least 66 pounds, which means they are usually 4 years old and sexually mature. At that stage, the fish should have spawned at least once to allow whatever fish that had been taken to be replenished, ensuring the continuity of the species. The fishing expedition is supervised by an observer from the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, the regional management body. Adhering to the conservation group's regulations has earned Balfego a certificate of sustainability, yet tuna populations continue to dwindle. Despite progress on boosting the fish's numbers, some environmental groups say they're concerned that wild stocks may not have fully recovered. One such group based in the UK, the Marine Conservation Society, lists farmed Atlantic bluefin tuna as a fish to avoid because the industry relies on catching young tuna and feeding them vast amounts of fresh fish. Feeding and fattening tuna. The 14-minute video details the entire process, from the fishing expedition to the fattening, harvesting, and packaging for sale. It's not clear how the fishermen determine that the fish have reached the right size before catching them, nor does the film show how undersized fish are removed from the nets if necessary. Sentient contacted Balfago to ask how fishermen could be sure each fish weighed 66 pounds before catching it in the purse seine net, but received no response. Balfago also claims to be the only farm in the world to tag each fish with a QR code documenting its voyage from net to fork. Yet the mackerel and sardines that make up these farmed tuna's diet are not traced. What species combination each farm chooses as feed is considered proprietary and not usually made public, but typically feed fish for tuna farms is imported from as far away as Norway, Mauritania, and South America to ensure a year-round food supply of an otherwise seasonally available fish. Balfago did not respond to Sentient's request for comment on the traceability of its feed fish. The tour participants are busy preparing their cameras and do not seem interested in the video. We near the spot in the water where the farm is located and quickly don our wetsuits. The guide calls us outside for the brief as we moor alongside one of the dozens of cages. Seagulls perch on the buoys holding the nets. As we bob in the breeze, our guide explains that the cages holding the fish are circular nets, 165 feet in diameter and 100 feet deep, housing between 300 and 400 fish each. The fish are mostly found in the first 50 feet of water, so we don't dive below that. This means each fish has approximately 150 square meters in which to live, which is a lot compared to other farmed fish, but not for wild tuna that typically migrate across entire oceans repeatedly throughout their lifetime. These predators are designed to travel fast and far. After spawning in the western Mediterranean, adults return to the Atlantic, a round-trip journey covering thousands of miles. You just listened to Farmed Bluefin Tuna Brands Claim to be Sustainable. Here's What Really Happens, Part 1, by Rachel Adams at sentientmedia.org. And I'm Marian Erickson, your host. Tune in tomorrow for the second half of this article, where you'll hear how these farmed tuna live a very different life from wild tuna. And you'll hear about the experience of these divers on the tour, what it's like to go down and visit with and feed these caged tuna, and how this industry is far from sustainable. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.